tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, most people know me as the former editor-in-chief of Dread Central. I was editor-in-chief of Dread Central from 2019 through 2021. 2 years before that, for about a year, I was the managing editor. And before that, I've had a career in horror journalism for basically a decade, for 10 years. So for a lot of people, it seems like I'm transitioning into a new world with Deeper Than Hell, which is my debut fiction novel. But what most people don't know, and as a way of further introducing myself, is that I come from a creative background. I've been writing fiction and poetry since I was in high school, and I got a degree in creative writing from UC Santa Cruz. So before I became a journalist, my life was profoundly creative. So it's not like I've switched gears all of a sudden after a lifetime in journalism. I've gone back and forth. And so going back into this world of writing fiction feels just like riding a bike, like I never forgot how, and I'm really excited. But yeah, I'm Josh Millican. For years, people knew me as Josh from Dread Central, like that was my name, and I was very happy about that because I loved being a part of that organization. But now I'm Josh Millican, the journalist / novelist, and I'm looking forward to writing more fiction and nonfiction works for people to enjoy.
Awesome. Yeah. So Deeper Than Hell is your debut novel, and it comes out tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, and you can order it now. I mean, I guess I'm just telling you that because by the time the interview comes out, of course, you'll be able to order it now.
Yeah. I will say I was mind boggled with Deeper Than Hell. I just, it was, I didn't read the blurb. I just, dove right in.
Awesome. I mean, I'm glad you, I mean, I assume we'll probably talk about chapter 3 at some point.
I was like, whoa. I think what I loved about it though is it had me, like, I was consistently like, okay, is he having just, one of those like fever dreams? Is this really happening? Is it not really? Constantly like really just fighting with myself, like, okay, like, no, this is really happening. And I love books like that just have me guessing, because I'm one of those people that likes to like, can I figure out the plot? Can I figure out what's going to happen? And so when a book totally takes me to a place where I'm like, this was not what I thought was going to happen, I love it. And I definitely can say that Deeper Than Hell is a book that I just kind of partway through was like, you know what, I'm just going to go on this ride and I'm going to stop trying to figure out what's going to happen.
Thank you. It is one of these cases where it's about the journey, not the destination. And that isn't to say there's a cop out, like it was all a dream, there's more to it than that, at least in that it's a metaphor for addiction. It's a way of kind of manifesting different versions of hell and what hell is ultimately. But that's also kind of why I wrote a couple things. That's why I referenced Jacob's Ladder a couple times throughout the book. It's because I know you're thinking this, I know that everyone reading gets to a certain point where they're like, wait a minute, is this all just a dream? And I wouldn't do that to people, there's definitely more to it than that. But that's why I wrote the epilogue, which I hoped would give kind of like a one final like Twilight Zone-esque twist. But it's also kind of like if you demand an answer, you can find one in the epilogue. Whether you're going to like it's another story. But if you demand an answer, you can get one in the epilogue.
And I loved the epilogue because it piggybacked onto everything that Sunny said at the beginning of the book. I noticed, especially a lot at the beginning and then different places throughout, pain was something that Sunny talked about, something that he consistently felt. And one of the reasons why he, with his addiction and everything is it took away that pain. And so when you get the epilogue, you see the pain and you can kind of understand it. And I honestly liked the epilogue because it really, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it was one of those like moments. that makes any sense. But
Yeah,
it really did kind of round everything out.
yeah. No, thank you for saying that. I do think the epilogue is going to be a little bit divisive, but some people say it's unnecessary, and some people like you have said, oh, it really adds something. Part of the reason I think in retrospect that the epilogue is really important is there aren't really a lot of strong female characters in Deeper Than Hell, and I didn't realize that at the time. It's not like I wrote this, thinking like, oh, this is a dude book or anything like that. It was unintentional. And there are female characters. It's not like it's a male only world, but there wasn't a truly fleshed out female character until the epilogue. The epilogue is, from the point of view of a woman. So, in that sense, a female is the second most important character because you only really get these 2 points of view. And yeah, Sunny is undependable. Like any time in a book or a movie when the first person narrator takes drugs or goes unconscious, all of a sudden you have to question everything. Is this real? And can I trust this guy? So the epilogue kind of shows you how much you can trust, because it does, confirm a lot of what Sunny said, but it also has some subtle differences, between the way Sunny sees himself, and the way other people perceived Sunny. So I'm really glad that it resonated with you.
It did. It really did. Let's see. What else did I want to ask? You kind of touched on that. What was the inspiration? Like, what is Deeper Than Hell something you've been working on over the years? Because like you said, you've had a creative background. Is it something you wrote years ago and then picked up again? Or is it something that just came to you?
It was the first thing. It was something that I wrote years ago. Many years ago, Obama was still president, and I just got more seriously into journalism, and especially when I started working for Dread Central. That was such a prestigious organization, and that took so much of my focus that all of my creative endeavors just got put on the shelf. And at the end of 2021. I went on a sabbatical. I left Dread Central because I had my son and I wanted to take, 3 to 6 months off and just really bond with my son. And I was thinking like, well, what am I going to do next? And I kind of put a lot of, what do you say? A lot of, you'll fix this up so I don't sound like an idiot, but like I threw a lot of things out into the universe. And Deeper Than Hell was just one of them where I kind of like dusted it off and I said, okay, well, let me see if I can find a publisher who's interested in this. And thankfully I did. But yeah, it was something I wrote a while ago. But the good part about having it sit on a shelf for years is, I really honed my skills as a journalist during the past few years. And then when I picked up Deeper Than Hell again, I had a new kind of take on everything. And I was able to edit it, and I think that really sharpened it up. Deeper Than Hell is lean and mean. It's barely longer than a novella, but I think that's because of my journalism background. Journalism teaches you to get to the point. It teaches you to trim the fat. It teaches you to have as many hooks as possible, never give your reader an excuse to put you down or click to another tab. You've got to stay engaged. So with all of these lessons of journalism, I went back to my fiction. And I really was just like, is this really necessary? No, let's take it out. Is this really necessary? Is this as exciting as what came before or what came after it? No, it needs to be worked on, So in that sense, Deeper Than Hell really benefited from its time on a shelf.
Yeah, no, I will say though, that even though it's a short book, it's packed with so much information that I was like, whoa, this little book packs a punch. It really has a lot. And I will say I loved some of the historical facts or things that were thrown out. In my review I said that at times I was sitting there like, like what, and like researching on the side, like, is this true? Like and I really love books that kind of make me, I guess I will say, question my sanity. Like I really I loved the book, and I loved, it really has you thinking, because my mind, again, you touched on addiction, you touched on, I will say, like I got some, loneliness from Sunny.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that's why he latched on to the character of Drew.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just things like that really had me I guess too, like you said, like questioning the character and his motives and things, but then it had me like really empathizing with him too, because it's like this character's really been through it. I don't know, I also liked the different layers of the underground that you have, and like, of course, as you know, like I said, I didn't read the blurb, so then I got like the whole, when I did read it after, I was like, oh, the whole, what is it?
Dante's Inferno.
Yes.
Well, Dante's Inferno works really well as a parallel allegory, because that's something that people understand, these 9 circles of hell, and you're constantly moving downward, downward, downward. So yeah, I did kind of make that parallel. It's not like a direct, I don't think they're exactly, I mean, you can say, okay, yeah, these represent the 9 circles, but they're more like what, 4 or 5 primary locations, and even that is kind of a lot for a single book, to have all of these different locations that are all vastly different in a way. Each one's their own world. But just to go back to something you were talking about before, which I really liked, yeah, there is a lot of fact in Deeper Than Hell. There are real people, real historical characters, real missions that are mentioned, real occult organizations, and there's also a lot of conspiracy theory. I'm a kind of guy, I love going on YouTube and just going down these rabbit holes. And, I don't really believe that the earth is hollow, but I love the fact that some people do, and I don't really believe that there are alien spaceships underground, but I love the fact that some people do. And it's just so neat to think about. And something else that I brought into Deeper Than Hell, there's a few creepypastas in there. And I love creepypastas because with a creepypasta, anyone is invited to add to it. And as long as you abide by the rules of it, then it actually is canonical. So, there are a couple of creepypastas in there, like the Backrooms, which is something else that didn't even exist when Obama was president, but I was able to tie that in, and I was really happy about that. And so yeah, it was just it was a blast to do. But I'm glad you were wondering what's real and what's not, because yeah, just about everything you could Google and find something about. But then, some of the things that kind of might seem the most realistic are actually the ones that I totally made up. Kind of the more outlandish it is, the more it's something I actually heard somewhere, or, these crazy stories that Drew was always telling Sonny, it's like, that can't be real, but you Google some of this stuff and you'll be surprised.
Yeah. No, I think that's what I like, is this, it's almost like a treasure. Because you're like,
and a friend of mine said it's like Goonies meets Requiem for a Dream, and I was like, that is awesome.
No, it definitely is, because
sort of aspect to it, like we're there's that romance, adventure spirit in there.
Definitely, I definitely agree with that. It was a very interesting read, and something I don't think, because you do, I take it you enjoy horror, but I will say this book had some undertones of that, but it was more like psychological for me, because like I said, it really had me like in that realm of what's real, what's not. And then, like you just said, like, oh God, this is so not true. But then you look it up and it's like, oh my God, that is true.
Yeah.
And so do you have, I guess where I'm leading with that question is like, what are some of your favorite authors, favorite books? Do you lean more towards horror type novels or thriller?
Yeah, well, in terms of my literary influences, Clive Barker, I think, people who know Clive Barker will see that inspiration, almost immediately. And then, a famous beat poet, William Burroughs, who wrote Naked Lunch, he had this whole basically subgenre that he created, this whole like heroin hallucinatory a vibe, this drug culture and psychedelic visions. And so, with Deeper Than Hell, I wanted to make something that was kind of like psychedelic horror. And, some people have described it like that, and I really like that too. My inspirations, though, came as much from cinema as from literature. And, that should pretty much be obvious to anyone who reads it. For starters, it's filled with horror movie references. But, all my years in Dread Central, basically 10 years, I was just, intensely focused on horror cinema to the point where I tried to see just about everything out there. If it was worth being seen, if people were talking about it, if someone had an opinion on it, I needed to see it so that I could participate in the conversation. So it really is influenced as much by film as it is by literature, maybe even more so. And I think, in a lot of ways, I wrote Deeper Than Hell with a cinematic eye. I wanted the settings to be just as intriguing as the story itself. And that's why I spent a lot of time, concocting these different settings and trying to give each one its, own hook and trying to make everything different. Whether, Deeper Than Hell is primarily horror, horror was definitely my primary influence. But you're right that the bulk of the horror is really all just crammed into chapter 3. I did that on purpose. Chapter 3 is kind of like my ode to Clive Barker. It's all about body horror and medical horror. And I just really just went deep for that one chapter. But then, most of the chapters are, like you're saying, psychological. And that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of, violence. It's a very painful journey for Sonny. A lot is inflicted upon him at the end. It's, depending on your definition, the end is almost as gory as chapter 3, but by then it's more of a ritualized, there's a point behind it sort of thing. That's kind of getting into the weeds, but definitely horror influenced me. And then, like I said, I love just watching YouTube videos and just geeking out on YouTube videos. And a lot of that inspired Deeper Than Hell. And I wanted to pay homage to that culture.
Oh, see, that's awesome. Yeah. I will say chapter 3 had me, I kind of read ahead and then looked back and was like, oh my gosh.
See, I didn't even, it's not like I was trying. It's not like I was like, I'm going to write the grossest shit I can imagine. I was just trying to, emulate my idols, Clive Barker and even David Cronenberg, his new film, which I haven't seen yet, Crimes of the Future. It looks like elements of chapter 3. I've seen, posters with people with their eyes and mouths sewn shut. And it's like, well, hey, chapter 3 of Deeper Than Hell, it's right at that same level. And, I was, thinking about body modifications and, permanent, irreparable types of body modifications. But, I've kind of been surprised by the people's reactions to chapter 3. And I'm hoping that people don't get to chapter 3 and just set it down and be like, I can't handle this. Trudge through chapter 3. Barrel through, because once you get through there, it's smooth sailing for a while, which isn't to say that it's not graphic and violent, but if you make it through chapter 3, you've made it through the worst.
Oh yeah. No, I will say I kept going. It was one of those where I was like, okay, repeat a little bit. Okay, that happened. That's going on. Okay, we're going this.
Yeah.
But it was a really good read. What are you working on right now that you're writing? Do you have stuff you're working on? Are you kind of looking back again, with this one, going back to some older stuff?
I've got a couple of things that are happening. I'm really glad you asked. Later this year, Encyclopocalypse, who's the publisher that's releasing Deeper Than Hell, they're going to be releasing a collection of the interviews I did over my years at Dread Central. So it'll be a nonfiction book. It's going to be a career retrospective, over 50 interviews with some of the biggest names in horror and indie horror and some people you've never heard of, in all aspects of filmmaking and even literature. So I'm really excited to put that out at the end of the year. And then people who know me know that I'm also working on the authorized biography of Richard Elfman, who's Danny Elfman's big brother, founder of the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo, writer and director of Forbidden Zone. So, it's an authorized biography, meaning he is my number one source. And he and I, over the course of a couple months, maybe even longer, we met every week. And we would sit on the rooftop porch of his beautiful home in the Hollywood Hills. He would cook for me. He would grill food for me. We would eat. We would drink I'd drink wine and he'd drink whiskey. He'd smoke cigars and I'd smoke cannabis, and I just pressed record and he just told me all of his stories. And it's going to be incredible. You know, people who are interested in this guy's life are going to have an unprecedented window. And, you know, not only is he one of the most exciting and exotic, erotic people I've ever met in my life, he comes from such a creative family, and he's done so much in terms of, you know, the art that he tackles, you know, music, film, and even in a way, people who read this book will see that food is an art form for him as well. And he's just such a cool guy. So yeah, I'm working on those things. And if Deeper Than Hell goes well, I would love to write a sequel. So, you know, I'll give the people what they want. If you want more from Deeper Than Hell, just say the word, because I'm actually kind of itching to do it.
I think that would be like, now that you say it, I'm like, that would be interesting to get a sequel, like a, you know, what's happening, especially because the way that you end it with the epilogue, you know, what's happening in that, you know, aspect with that character, or, you know, what's going on with Sunny. And
well,
Drew,
I thought it might be cool to write it over from Thaddeus's point of view, because Thaddeus is this character who's introduced in chapter 1. And then, you know, I don't want to give too much away because he's a cool character. He comes back in chapter 6, and it's like, what? How did he get here? You know, because he's someone from up above, and it's like running into someone you know from high school, but in another country or something. It's like, so how did Thaddeus end up, you know, at the Great Bottom, which is this, you know, feral community of disposable people who have just been shunned from society. So, like, I would love to do a sequel to Deeper Than Hell that's from Thaddeus's point of view.
That would actually be a good one too, because you get to see his take. And like you said, he obviously has a journey of his own.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And, you know, underground is, you know, it's not infinite, but you're talking about millions of cubic miles underground. You know, for me, I've always been intrigued by the idea of life underground, and it's so much more fascinating. You know, I love sci-fi, don't get me wrong. I love aliens. I love, you know, futuristic sci-fi, but for me, it's a lot scarier and more intense to think about these things right below our feet, you know, as opposed to in a galaxy far, far away.
Well, no, exactly, because you hear so much of like discoveries, you know, underground cities, because I used to watch, I can't remember what show on the History Channel that would go and tour different underground cities that were discovered. And it's one of those things that you're like, what?
Yeah. I mean, whether you're talking about the catacombs of Paris or the subway systems with, you know, abandoned stations, or, you know, you're talking about a deep underground military base that people have set up, or just a cave system. I mean, underground is just so fascinating to me.
And what you've done with it, especially because we know that there are, you know, places underground. And so it's like, well, what, you know, you can kind of do anything with it. The underground's your oyster.
Exactly. So, you know, as for what's going on the surface, what the epilogue implies, you know, why is the sky orange? I mean, there's a lot going on, you know, it's a real kind of, like I said, I was trying to go for like this big Twilight Zone ending and really like rip the rug out from under people. Because, you know, if you just read Sunny's story and we're like, okay, if it's not a dream, this is probably what's happening. No. It's something else. It's something that maybe you kind of dismissed initially. So I like it.
Yeah. I really, I hopefully you do a sequel. If you do, if you do, I would definitely be reading it.
Oh, fantastic. That's great to hear.
I'm interested too, you know, the nonfiction stuff. It's always, you know, to learn about people. So your interviews, that's, you know, I want to make sure I touch on those too. I don't dismiss that. But the interviews, and then your autobiography, what did you call it? Autobiography?
Authorized biography.
Authorized. Even,
yeah, you know, it's important to let people know it's authorized and that I've got my information from the source. It's almost like a 50-50 project between me and him, you know, because I'm not just in a library. I'm not just, you know, online, you know, looking at Wikipedia and stuff. I'm talking to the guy who I'm telling you about. So, and he's going to have final say on what's published too, you know, because we both want it to be a celebration of his life and his career. this isn't some sort of like investigative, thing, where, I show him with all his warts. Nah, man, we're just going to talk about his wonderful life and his wonderful achievements. And there's hardly anything to talk about besides how wonderful he is.
See, that's awesome. I'll be looking out for both of those. When is the authorized autobiography? When does that come out?
That's still in the works. So I can't imagine that coming out this year at this point. It'll probably be in 2023 because that's still taking shape. What I want to do now is do a lot of secondary interviews with people who have been close to Richard, people who Richard inspired. So that's going to be a whole nother aspect. And I've been focused on Deeper Than Hell, tunnel vision, for the past couple months, especially leading up to this. But once this is behind me a little bit, another week or two after the release, I'm going to be putting the biography back on the front burner. And, I just can't wait for people to see it. It's going to be a really fun, in the same way Deeper Than Hell has a lot of different chapters that go a lot of different places. Richard Elfman's life has a lot of different chapters that go a lot of different places. So I just can't wait for people to read this collection of his stories.
Awesome. Well, I will keep my eye out for that one.
And people should follow me on Twitter at Josh_Millican, Millican, because that's where I'm going to be making all of these announcements. I'm just really not on Instagram. I'm kind of all full on Facebook. I've kind of got all the friends I'm allowed to have unless I become like a public figure or something. So come and hang out with me on Twitter because I'm definitely going to keep people up to date on all of my doings.
Okay, awesome. Twitter's where it's at. Definitely follow you on Twitter. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add or say? I definitely have to say, people go out, grab Deeper Than Hell because it is one hell of a ride.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me. HorrOrigins is a great little site, and I love what you guys do at the festival, and just really, really tip my hat to you guys. Thank you for your time and for reading Deeper Than Hell and for putting so much thought into it. I really appreciate it. And let me just say how much I love and appreciate Encyclopocalypse. I'm a first-time author. I'm a fiction writer, and it's a tough world. Being able to join an organization, that offered me editors and, graphic designer for the cover and mentorship and marketing and promotion. It's just been a dream come true. So I really want to thank Mark Allen Miller, who's the founder of Encyclopocalypse, Sean Duriger, who he's also a really important at Encyclopocalypse, and he was my doorway into the company. Preston Fassell, who's the author of Our Lady of the Inferno, was invaluable with helping me with my marketing, with positioning myself with this novel. Because everyone knows me in horror journalism circles, but I'm kind of new kid on the block in terms of horror literature now. So it's been great having a team that knows the ropes, kind of walking me through this, and it's been a learning experience. And I'm just really excited for this next chapter in my career. Awesome. Well, thank you for letting me interview you, and it's been fun. Thank you, Patricia.